Hello, everyone. This is Kinton Jin, and I'm here to present my PowerPoint on the National Liberation Front, or FLN, of Algeria. Historiography. The National Liberation Front was a nationalist political party in Algeria, and still remains as the dominant political party in the country. They served as a resistance movement and paramilitary force during their founding, dedicated in liberating Algeria from French control. Also known as the FLN, Front de Liberation Nationale, the movement was founded in 1954, with its members being formerly political figures from previously failed movements such as MTLD and ENA, both created by Mizali Hadj himself. While their armed wing, the National Liberation Army, participated in the Algerian War, the FLN mostly used diplomacy in addressing Algerian sovereignty. Nevertheless, while the movement was mostly fighting for the good of the country and to finally be free from French sovereignty or French imperialism, some of its actions were questionable and brutal in achieving independence. Colonial history of Algeria, 1830. The invasion of the Algiers was committed by the Kingdom of France, to which resulted in Algeria's conquest, formerly known as the Delique of Algeria, or Ottoman Algeria. The Ottoman Empire relinquished control of Algeria to the French after their defeat. 1848. Algeria became an integral part of the French administration. In other words, they paid the same amount of tribute and taxes as the other French colonies of the age of imperialism. 1870. Projects initiated by the French Third Republic to assimilate Algeria went underway, resulting in 5,000 Alsace-Lorraine refugees to be resettled in Africa after the Franco-Prussian War. While many Muslim Algerians were forced to work on French-owned farms and estates. As a result of this procedures, 15% of native Algerians were either wiped out or relocated to other areas. 1940 to 1945. Many French Algerians were drafted to fight in the war. After the Third Republic's collapse, Algeria was overseen by the Vichy French state. The FLN's predecessors and its founding. After the Second World War and the Fourth French Republic's founding, the Algerians had enough and wanted to be free. Thanks to European influences regarding nationalism, many Algerian nationalist groups arose. Mizali Hadj, father of Algerian nationalism, he was one of the successful figures to lead a successful nationalist movement. However, after his visit to France and meeting with left-wing groups, Mizali's original movement of peaceful protest changed to become more radical and violent. Mizali founded two nationalist groups during the 20th century, the ENA in 1928 and the MTLD in 1946, unfortunately due to infighting and interjection from the French Algerian police. These movements disbanded and later regrouped as the FLN. Toussaint Rouge, 1954. On November 1st, the National Liberation Front made their debut in Algeria. Much more organized but still belligerent compared to their predecessors, the FLN was ready to fight. On All Saints' Day, at 2 a.m., 70 attacks committed by the Algerian nationalist group erupted throughout the country, bombs exploding in most streets and populated areas and leaving 10 dead while hundreds were injured. After the attack, news was broadcasted throughout the world, and many were left horrified. As a response to the attacks, French Prime Minister Pierre Mendès France would not tolerate such an act of terrorism, and began mobilizing troops to which initiated the Algerian War. The Prime Minister sent about 50,000 troops, including troops stationed outside of France, over to Algeria, aiding the soldiers already present in the country. Decolonization and the Algerian War. Before the war officially erupted, the French Fourth Republic already had plans of decolonization and giving their former colonies independence. Under the control of Prime Minister Pierre Mendès France, a socialist and anti-colonialist, he sought to end French colonialism after the First Indochina War. Having struck a deal with Ho Chi Minh and relinquished Vietnam, he moved on to Algeria to do the same thing, and to avoid any further conflict. Unfortunately, after the Algerian War broke out, his plans for decolonization changed and had no choice but to suppress the insurrectionists and protect the Pied Noirs, French Algerians, living in the country. Even though he originally favored concessions to the Algerian nationalists, Pierre had to think about what was best for France and to protect his own people, even if it means going to war. Warfare and diplomacy. The FLN specialized in guerrilla warfare, to which they learned from French military personnel stationed in the country or from veterans of the Second World War. Because the FLN's forces were outnumbered by the much larger French forces, they resorted to such tactics to compensate their limited numbers. Despite their militarism, the FLN were not above using diplomacy during wartime, having sent representatives to the UN to address Algerian sovereignty while arguing with French ambassadors for relinquishment. There were even FLN-controlled Algerian embassies in the United States as well, requesting aid from the American government. Opportunity and equality. Despite their warfare and brutality, the FLN provided opportunity for both male and female members. While most became soldiers trained in guerrilla warfare, some women received the benefit of fighting alongside their menfolk as well. Cases of French doctors, mostly students, stationed in Algeria and in Tunisia and Morocco, volunteered to help treat the FLN, along with teaching some in medical practices. This altruism was mostly a means to ensure protection while also guaranteeing safe passage back to France. Nevertheless, both the French doctors and Algerian rebels cooperated and treated each other as equals, despite being from both enemy sides. Controversies. While the FLN have committed atrocities such as assassinations and terrorist attacks, such things were necessary in their revolution. Actions such as the Toussaint Rouge was merely a means to achieve their goals for independence, even though it was met with extreme backlash from both Algerians and French alike. However, these were still a necessary evil, as the time for talk ended a long time ago. The FLN's use of torture had stirred controversy within the global community, as they harmed and maimed many French soldiers, along with pro-French and anti-FLN citizens who protested them. However, their reasons were justified as the French committed acts of torture against the Algerians as well, giving them an eye for an eye moment. Unfortunately, the one issue the FLN could never justify, were the cases of sexual violence and prostitution being perpetrated by members of the ALN, National Liberation Army, which high-level members tried to police and set moral guidelines within their ranks in order to stop such evils. Nevertheless, despite such hard behavior, the FLN continued receiving support and made up for such actions. Algerian sovereignty and Fourth Republic's fall. Through years of fighting and expenses going into the war, the French Fourth Republic suffered financial and political woe, under the guidance of PM Guy Mollet. After a military coup that overthrew the Mollet government in 1958, Charles de Gaulle became the prime minister of the newly established French Fifth Republic and withdrew much of the war efforts in Algeria. Eventually, thanks to both de Gaulle's reform plans and the new constitution established in the Fifth Republic, the FLN managed to establish a provisional government and finally achieve independence from the French, as de Gaulle finally granted the Algerians their sovereignty and decolonized and initiated further decolonization. Afterwards, the war finally ended in 1962 with a declaration of peace from both sides. And that brings us to an end to our presentation. Right here under the bibliography is a list of books and sites in which all the information was gathered. Feel free to look them up and enlighten yourself on the research topic at hand. Thank you.